Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is none other than the Time Monster. So, without further ado, let's get into the story. The Doctor and Jo are working at Unit when all of a sudden a crystalline piece of equipment goes missing, and it turns out that it's none other than the Master who has stolen it. It also turns out that this piece of crystal is no ordinary piece of crystal, but in fact it is the key to Cronus, an ancient god from the time before the light. Cronus is a god of light, and inside of his prison he has the ability to essentially exude a mass amount of power. The Doctor and the Master find themselves caught inside of one another's TARDISes, and the Doctor soon realises that the only way for them to free each other is to imprison each other as a whole. Master finally manages to do it though. He manages to free Cronus and use it against the Doctor, wiping the Doctor out once and for all. His eternal victory over his arch-nemesis. However, it leaves Jo in a very precarious situation, in which she's not quite sure what to do. With the Doctor gone and her being sent off to Atlantis, her only last option is to stop the Master in whatever devilish scheme he has. When they get to Atlantis, however, she soon learns that the Master's power is not as powerful as she believes it to be. It turns out that he doesn't truly control Cronus. Cronus, the Titan himself, happens to have his own motives, and decides that he will not obey the will of the Master. At the same time in Atlantis, we also find out that there is a Minotaur walking around the halls, down in a labyrinth, deep below the surface. Eventually, the Doctor manages to come back, and manages to finally free Jo from the clutches of the Master and his deadly plan. However, that's not before a couple of mishaps happen along the way. For instance, it turns out that Sergeant Benton ends up getting turned into a baby. Along with that, until Cronus' power is truly stopped, time begins to run a little bit wild. The Master, however, soon has his comeuppance when Cronus fully turns on the Master and imprisons him back inside the crystal with himself. So, the Time Monster. What did I think of this story as a whole? It's a very dramatic story, having some very funny moments, some very dark moments, and I feel like the greatest point for Roger Delgado in this story is just that kind of split second in which the audience believes the Doctor is gone once and for all. It kind of gives you that kind of silent kind of gasping moment, because you're sitting there and you truly believe he's beaten the Doctor. The other thing I like in this story, though, is the effects we find to do with Cronus. There are some very dark and bleak moments in which it turns out that the scientists who discovered the crystal in the first place have sadly come to the effects of what we like to call time distortion. And it turns out, because of the time distortion happening so rapidly, one of the scientists is on the breaking limits of death. If the Doctor doesn't get the crystal back and fix the problem, they will be gone like a light. The other time distortion effect, as I previously mentioned earlier, is the fact that Sergeant Benton gets pretty much turned into a baby, which is absolutely hilarious. Not only because he was turned into a baby, but also because he has to stand there butt naked in front of the rest of the crew, the Doctor, the Brigadier, and Jo just laughing her ass off. But overall, it's a very funny and comedic story. However, as I mentioned this, the one element I feel like is a little bit misplaced in this story is Atlantis. I like the themes of where this was going. I like the themes of the Master beating the Doctor. I like the themes of the Master learning that he can't control a Titan. However, I do feel like that power, the gods overall, I feel like it would have made more sense for this story maybe to just be set in a dimension where time runs rapidly, or it doesn't run on the same course as it does in our world. Whereas I feel like Atlantis having the Minotaur chucked in there and a sacrifice and everything else, I feel like it just kind of pushes too far away from the original narrative. And for that reason, I'm going to have to mark this down to at least about a 6 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next Doctor Who review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, and have an incredible night.